The battles we witness today are just one chapter in an eternal war between red and blue that began a long time ago. Or that's what someone who knows nothing about this game's history would believe. Actually, we have to go back to the game Clash of Clans, since as we know, these two games share a universe with intertwined stories that take place in the same world. So we have to talk about the origin of the villages that are the foundation of this universe. In the beginning, peaceful villages were formed all over the Clash world, without the need for defenses or walls, because in this world there were no armies and everyone lived together in harmony. However, not all villages shared this peaceful vision, since in addition to the conventional villages, goblin villages also emerged. And these cunning and opportunistic creatures began to sporadically attack human villages, stealing resources, especially gold. These guys love gold, thus they spread chaos throughout the Clash world. This, combined with the fact that more and more human villages began to realize that stealing resources was easier and more effective than the hard work of extracting them. Hey! Why is this being compared to a country with a lot of stars on its flag? I don't know, but just keep going, okay? Soon, these attacks became very frequent and spread throughout the Clash world, forcing villages to train their first armies like barbarians, archers, or goblins, and to build defenses and walls. Over time, the villages began to form clans to protect each other, share resources, and strengthen their defenses. This union gave rise to the name Clash of Clans. But who ruled these villages? Although you might think of the kings from Clash Royale, in reality, the leaders who manage the resources, command the armies, and coordinate with the clans are the so-called heroes. This created a kind of status or social pyramid in these villages, where the goblins belong to the lowest rung. And remember this, because later it will help us understand many things about the history of Clash. Now then, how does all of this connect to Clash Royale? As the villages and their clans grew stronger, their most powerful troops began to look for more than just stealing resources. They craved glory, prestige, and the opportunity to prove their supremacy in battles. Kings aware of this and hungry for glory, because, well, they're kings. And who else? They built the first battle arenas near the villages. But you might be wondering, which was the first arena? In the Clasharama episode, by chance, we are shown the most prestigious king of all, known in the Clash universe as the Royal Ghost. He created the first arena during the beta era. This arena didn't have princess towers and the fights were to the death, an extreme demonstration of the king's power and arrogance. However, his reign came to a tragic end when a prince named Morgan defeated him in combat, releasing his spirit and giving rise to the Royal Ghost. Not all kings or troops were willing to fight to the death in every battle, aware of the danger and eager to preserve their best warriors, and obviously their own lives. They turned to the most powerful wizards in the Clash universe. These wizards developed an ingenious solution. The battles would continue to be epic spectacles, but without the risk of irreparable losses. That's how the cards were born, where the souls of the troops are stored, allowing the troops to be summoned again and again without losing their lives in the process. And yes, this doesn't appear in the official lore. And even though it might seem like I just pulled this out of nowhere, I have several reasons to believe that this hypothesis is actually what happened. First, even though many people think that the cards are just a mechanic to make the game more dynamic, the reality is that even within the game's lore, the troops are literally cards. This is shown in several official animations, where we see the kings manipulating cards instead of troops. Second, the wizards are the only characters in this universe with the power to cast spells, magic, and potions. Therefore, it makes sense that they were the ones who created these soul vessels known as cards. And third, I like the princess. But why is this here? Let's stop with the weird fetishes and move on with the video. Okay. Over time, the original 7 arenas expanded to a total of 23, including basic arenas that reflect the style of nearby villages or the castles of the kings. Even floating arenas where only the most powerful dared to compete. This arduous path was created exclusively to show superiority over the novice kings. Although for the more experienced and greedy kings of the Clash universe, there is a league system called the Path of Legend, where only the best fight for power and glory. history to become one of the most powerful kings in the game. And what about the cards? At first, there were only 42 cards, divided into 3 rarities: common, rare, and epic. It wasn't long before the legendary ones arrived in the game, completely revolutionizing it. These powerful cards not only have special abilities, but many of them also have dark backstories. For example, the Log, a card that, according to the story, was accidentally created by a drunken lumberjack who was cutting down a tree during the Clashmas festival when Christmas is celebrated in Clash. Wow. When his bottle of rage spilled onto the log, this peculiar but powerful card was born. As time went by, many more troops were recruited by the king, or some were not. Such is the case of the builder from Clash of Clans, who, as revealed in an episode of Clasharama called Donnie and the Spell Factory, he dreamed of being a wizard and fighting in the arena. This builder managed to trick the king into letting him participate in a battle as a wizard, but his performance was a disaster. Realizing that magic wasn't for him, he decided to contribute in the arena using his building skills. It is said that the cannon cart and the zappies are his creations. We know that he controls the flying machine, and it's said that he built a giant suit of armor with which he fights in the arena. Does that sound familiar? Yes, it's the Mega Knight. Currently, we have 116 cards in the game, and talking about the lore of each one would be an endless task. But I'll mention the ones that, in my opinion, have the most peculiar and interesting backgrounds. For example, according to the description of the Electric Spirit, it seems that he and the Knight don't get along very well, and it's all because of the Knight's mustache. And in this universe, mustaches are a kind of status symbol, and it's said that the Knight himself reached his position precisely thanks to his iconic mustache. The monk also has an interesting mustache. However, his power comes from spending decades perfecting it in his lair. Wait, did he mention the monk without first introducing the champions? What an idiot! The king, guided by ancient myths that spoke of powerful warriors. He discovered an ancient map that pointed to 3 places where extraordinary troops could be found. Powerful fighters who commanded their own small kingdoms or fortresses, driven by the possibility of adding these formidable warriors to his ranks. He sent his recruits to contact the first 3 champions. That's how the Golden Knight, better known as the Handsome One, joined his ranks. And he really is a hunk. The Archer Queen and the Skeleton King joined his ranks. Little by little, the king kept reaching out to more champions. And then came the Mighty Miner, the previously mentioned monk, and a particular case. The king's rebellious nephew, son of the Red King, he stole the champion scroll that belonged to another warrior, and with the help of his imposing guardian, he proclaimed himself champion. With the arrival of these colossi in the arena, the common troops who were once the most powerful in their villages, they began to be forgotten. You again? Just like she forgot you. Man, you're so annoying. These troops were crushed on the battlefield. However, a group of bards, armed with rock guitars that shoot laser beams. And yes, this is part of the official lore, and I'm not making it up. I want whatever Supercell is smoking. They transformed the first 4 troops: barbarians, royal giants, firecrackers, and skeletons, giving them special abilities. Although personally, I prefer to think that they just added Dark Elixir to the cards. That sounds more reasonable. Each evolution has its own lore, and since today there are already more than 20, I could make an entire video just telling the stories behind each evolution. But in this video, I'm going to skip over a lot of stories, because honestly, some of them seem like they came straight out of a goblin's imagination. I mean, they really smoked 3 joints before writing some of this lore. Do you remember that I mentioned that there are social hierarchies in the villages of Clash of Clans, where goblins are at the lowest level? Well, this isn't anything new, since in practically every official animation, they give us a little idea of how these gold-loving creatures are. They are treated like scum, objects, or simply ignored within the villages. But the truth is that even if they seem like it, goblins are not stupid. Over time, they realized the obvious disdain they received from all the troops. Some goblins tried to pass themselves off as wizards or barbarians, but in the end, they were never accepted. All this anger accumulated over centuries led them to form small communities of rebellious goblins within the villages. And even though in their daily lives they pretended to be fools, they were much smarter than anyone imagined. They gathered in large numbers and escaped to a remote island where they built a great but silent empire. There, under the leadership of a mysterious figure, they developed advanced technologies, and they specialized in combat, preparing for their revenge. One day, the Blue King was sailing through the Clash Seas, unaware that he was dangerously close to the Goblin Island. Unfortunately for him, the goblins spotted him, and without hesitation, they shot down his ship with a rocket. The king was captured and taken before the leader of the goblins, the Goblin Queen, who, in an act of defiance, snatched his crown. The goblins were not seeking the king's death, but something more meaningful. They wanted to be acknowledged. They wished to participate under the leadership of their queen, and to prove their supremacy in the arenas. This act was not just revenge, but a declaration of their power and their intention to claim respect, which had been denied to them for so long. Would you like to see more stories? Subscribe to let me know.